That we led with at the top of the hour, the Northern Ireland Secretary, Brandon Lewis, confirming proposals for a statute of limitations that will apply equally to all Troubles-related incidents. He announced that in the House of Commons just under an hour ago. Joining me now to react to this, Julie Hambleton. Her sister Maxine was killed in the 1974 Birmingham Pub Bombings, and Julie was listening to what was said in the House of Commons. Julie, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Sarah Jane.
Very emotional afternoon for you, I can imagine, after hearing what the Northern Ireland Secretary had to say. What's your reaction to this planned statute of limitations?
Well, like I would imagine hundreds, if not thousands of other families were incandescent with rage, because what this proposal of legislation is going to be allowing will be, in essence, giving murderers a licence to kill. Because as long as any future terrorist organisation, and trust me, there'll be some waiting in the wings, and this must be music to their ears, as long as they come with a political stance of we are fighting for our political freedoms or whatever, they can kill thousands and thousands of people in any of our cities without any fear of retribution, of prosecution, or any criminal prosecutions whatsoever. What kind of a society are we planning for our future generations? I chose not to have children. I'm not strong enough to have children. Losing Maxine had such a massive effect on me that the thought of having a child and then potentially losing that child, I am not strong enough to cope. I don't know how our mother has coped, and I don't know how all the other parents have coped. This legislation is basically writing off any history that our loved ones ever existed. And that's what it's all about. This is for the government and their predecessors to bury their dirty, toxic pasts and for them to never, ever see the light of day. The rhetoric that Brandon Lewis was coming out with is obscene and abhorrent to our ears. How is it possible that a government in a country that claims to have a judicial system that's the envy of the world is considering implementing legislation that will allow mass murderers to have their liberty? Can you imagine if the Americans gave amnesty to the Boston bomber? The public anger that was seen last January 2020 in Washington would be an... What people need to understand about the Troubles is that the British state had infiltrated both the IRA and the loyalist side, so much so that it could be argued that the British state are also complicit in many of the murders. And the sole purpose of this legislation, there's no ifs and no buts. Please do not be blinded by all the rhetoric and so-called reconciliation. How can there possibly be reconciliation?
Julie, it's so hard. I know how upset you are. This will drag up all of those painful memories about Maxine, and you live with this every day. And today is the height of that emotion. What the government is saying, what they've essentially said, is that some families will never get justice. Instead, the focus is going to be on information recovery for families of those killed. What Brandon Lewis said was that the current system isn't working. He said this is the best and only solution for victims and their families. That, he said, is the painful reality. Do you think there is another way? Because Brandon Lewis pointed out when his opposite number on the Labour benches said everything she had to say, echoing what you're saying, he came back and said Labour have not offered another solution. The process of getting justice in these historical cases is so complex the government feel that this is the best solution, that victims may not get justice now because of the statute of limitations, but people may be more forthcoming with answers. I think I know the answer to this, but for many families, they may not get justice. Will they be satisfied with finding out more and getting answers without it ending in prosecution?
No. And this rubbish, talking about reconciliation and truth, even if that was to come to pass, who's to say that the person talking will actually be telling the truth? Because most of them wouldn't know how to spell the word, let alone speak it. And as far as there's no evidence there and that it's just too late to bring about prosecutions, that is another load of utter rubbish. The evidence is there. It's just that it's been hidden. And the purpose and the priority of this government and past successive governments is to keep their collusion with both sides of the IRA and the loyalists, is to keep their dirty, toxic secrets well and truly buried.
Julie, will you fight this? Will you fight this?
For us to absolutely, of course we will fight it.
Because the Labour benches were saying that legally...
Listen, Sarah Jane, today...
No, please carry on.
Sarah Jane, today, that they have buried a young lad who was stabbed to death down the road from where I live, Dijon. God bless him, may he rest in peace. Can you imagine if Dijon's mother and brother and family were to sit back and listen to the similar rhetoric that we've just had to sit and listen to by Brendan Lewis and by Boris Johnson jumping to his defence after Keir Starmer, thank you very much, highlighted our campaign and other people's, sitting back and taking it and saying, well, there's not enough evidence there and it's very complex. Of course it's complex, of course it's challenging. And you know why it's complex and challenging? Because they've got too much to hide, because the predecessors of past governments have got our loved ones' blood on their hands, and they want to do everything that is in their power to keep their collusion well and truly buried. And we will not sit back and allow our loved ones to be forgotten about. And the other issue is that, of course, it's complex, and the reason why it's complex is because all governments refuse to have any dialogue with the victims of these terrorist attacks. We have never, ever been acknowledged by any government, irrelevant of what political party. Today has been the most significant day for the Birmingham Pub Bombing families, where Keir Starmer referred to me by name, which we were very grateful for. Louise Haig has referred to us and other families in Northern Ireland. But there are so many other families, the Omar in Enniskillen, Ballymurphy, the London Wharf bombings, the
representing all those families
just
today.
So many other,
you're representing all those families today.
All of these families.
And you're doing a sterling job at representing those families and their feelings today. You mentioned the fact that Sir Keir Starmer brought you up in the House of Commons today. I just want to read you the Prime Minister's statement, because Sir Keir Starmer said, what does the Prime Minister have to say to Julie, because she is listening, and other victims like her? The Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, said, I think the whole House will acknowledge the suffering of victims like Julie and their families, and of course nothing I can say or do now will mitigate her loss. But it is also true that the people of Northern Ireland must, if we possibly can allow them to, must move forward.
It is impossible. It is absolutely impossible to move forward until truth, justice and accountability is seen to be done. The purpose of this legislation is to cover up to the true scale of the exposure of the British state in the past. And that is what this is all about. It's a smoke screen. And until they go into dialogue with the victims on both sides of the troubles, only then can there be some answers. But the problem is, not only with the Conservatives, but Labour too, and I've told the Labour MPs that have taken the time to speak to us the same thing. Until they listen to us and all the others, only then can there be a path towards peace and prosperity and some kind of calmness, not just in Northern Ireland, but also within the mainland of England too, where many families have suffered the loss of their loved ones. There are just too many suffering, and we cannot allow ourselves, even for our future generations. How can we possibly wake up tomorrow morning or in months to come, having had this legislation being implemented, knowing that our children and our children's children could be walking down the street one day, be blown up, and then in years to come, the very same terrorists who murdered them walk away scot-free because the British government put into legislation in 2021 that you can kill whoever you like, wherever you like on British soil, because it was for a political stance. Who on earth, in what country, in a Western society, would allow that to go through?
Julie, it's been good to talk to you this afternoon. Thank you very much for taking the time. It is an extremely difficult day for you, and as you referenced, other victims' families as well. You're questioning the morality of that announcement in the House of Commons today. The legality of what's been announced today will be questioned as well. Julie Hambleton, remembering her sister Maxine, thank you very much for speaking to us here on Sky News. We'll have much more reaction to events in the House of Commons concerning Northern Ireland, and Brandon Lewis, the Northern Ireland Secretary's announcement about a proposal for a statute of limitations to apply equally to all Troubles-related incidents. More reaction throughout the day here on Sky News.